Prime Minister Trudeau today commenting on the weekend's toppling of a statue of Sir John A. Macdonald in Montreal, saying he was deeply disappointed by what took place.
Those kinds of acts of vandalism are not advancing the path towards greater justice and equality in this country.
On Saturday, protesters at a Defund the Police rally tore down a statue of Canada's first Prime Minister. Trudeau says he understands frustration and impatience of Canadians who experience systemic discrimination and racism throughout their lives, but he says Canada is a country of laws and we need to respect those laws. For more on this, let's bring in CTV News political commentator and former NDP leader Tom Mulcair. So, Tom, we just heard, what the Prime Minister had to say about this, and also condemning violence was the Mayor of Montreal, Valerie Plante. So, leaders saying violence is not acceptable. But it certainly reinvigorates the debate over whether some of these statues should be taken down or removed entirely. I wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Statues, place names. For example, in Montreal, there was a well-known street called Amherst named after a British general who was genocidal. He put smallpox bacillus in blankets to give to First Nations to kill them. And so his name was removed just last year, and the name of a First Nations leader was put in its place. And maybe that's the way it should be. The government also has to be prompt to do that sort of thing, because there's still a national park in Nova Scotia named for Fort Amherst, which in turn, of course, is named for the same person. That name should be scrubbed. It shouldn't be there. Montreal's McGill University, a world-class institution, Bev, is going to be celebrating next year its 200th anniversary. They're looking forward to that. But of course, McGill had the money to give for the foundation of that institution because he owned slaves, and that's how he made his money, and that's very controversial. So without removing the name, perhaps they should remove the statue of James McGill. So these things are going to keep going on, but it's hard not to agree with the Prime Minister that there's no way we can just allow people to pick and choose on their own and decide what's going to be torn down and vandalized. And Mr. Trudeau went so far during his press conference to say that perhaps we should be analyzing the record of every former prime minister, including his dad. So I'm not too sure what commission's going to be up to that task, and I think it's Herculean. But there are some clear cases in our history, like Amherst, where we can and should be acting, and the federal government should act on the name of that park right now.
And what about the argument, though, that if you do remove these statues, it erases history instead of learning from it?
Oh, I'm not pleading for the removal of John A. Macdonald's statue. I do think that there are things in our historical and colonial past that are shameful. The most obvious among them is the case of the residential schools, but those carried on right into the 70s and indeed the 80s. I mean, Jean Chrétien was the Minister of Indian and Northern Affairs. Pierre Trudeau was the Justice Minister and then Prime Minister when the worst period of those schools was still going on in terms of the raw numbers. So there's still a lot to be explained by different generations, but I don't think that you can just allow vigilantism. I don't think you can just allow groups to say, well, we've decided that statue, that monument, that street name, that place, that's got to go, and we're going to take care of that. That can't be in a free and democratic society based on the rule of law.
And what about the comments from the Alberta Premier who said, listen, if you folks don't want it, ship it here, we'll put it outside the legislature?
Right. And I think that's just Jason Kenney having his own good partisan political sport with his voters in his own province. On the grounds of the legislature in Quebec City, there's a statue of my great-great-grandfather, Honoré Mercier. And in my family, there's a proud history of having fought Macdonald's decision and the eventual hanging of Louis Riel. That's part of our Canadian history. But I don't think it's up to a mob, a rabble, to come out with ropes and tear the thing down. I think that statue in particular has been so hit so often that there's no way it's going to go back there. But is there any way to look objectively at the history with its bad parts and its good parts? But again, Bev, I do think that there is an honest way to look at history and say, but there are some things that are unforgivable, like the attempted genocide by Jeffrey Amherst. And I think that removing his name from anything in Canada historical, that's fair.
Yeah, okay. Tom Mulcair, great to have you on this. Thank you very much.
Good to talk to you again, Bev.